Okay, so what I've got for you today is probably going to be one of the worst casts I will ever do, but hopefully also one of my more entertaining ones. What I've got for you is a best of 3 series of StarCraft 2 played in the Scion Custom Races Mod. This particular series is from the Scion Cup that took place last weekend. Now, they asked if I wanted to cast the event. I figured, you know what, I'm gonna go into it without any real knowledge. I haven't really seen a whole lot of this mod in the past. And I figured it was gonna be, you know, fun, but maybe a little bit one-sided. And I gotta say, I was pleasantly surprised what high-level gameplay looks like in the Scion mod. So, this is gonna be a full best of 3 series. I have about a dozen games of experience with this mod, so I will make terrible calls and I will certainly not give you all the information that you probably could use, but I'm gonna try my very best. So, game number 1 in this best of 3 series, we find ourselves on a map called Eternal Empire, and spawning right here in the top right-hand corner, playing with a race known as the Xayid. We're looking at none other than eGggz's main hatchery? Nexus? Command center? I don't know what the structure is called. The opponent, though, in the opposite corner, playing with the good old Protoss for now. I know you will bust out the... it's called a Chiron? It's spelled like that? The Chiron? Anyways, he will be busting that out as well later on in this series. For now, though, with the yellow Protoss pieces, we're looking inside of the main base of you. Not me, not us, not them, but it's you. You don't remember? It's only been a couple of days. Anyways, guys, I'm gonna try and explain to you what I know of the Xayid up to this point, okay? I am by no means an expert, but they certainly seem like a very fun species to play with. So, first off, it's called a scavenger nest. Fair enough. So the scavenger nest, it kind of looks like a hatchery, but it does not function as one. It is a structure that you, well, look at that. For example, the drone, or was it called the scavenger itself? Of course it's called a scavenger. It is not consumed as it built the siphoner over here. It's building up its structure right now, but it has to be there in order to actually continuously put down, well, the structure, right? It has to be there, kind of like an SCV, I suppose, to be able to build it. Now, the scavenger nest, it only produces the worker, it seems. So, it's currently birthing additional scavengers. At the very least, that's the verb that's being used right over here on the bottom right-hand corner of your screen. But then the actual ground units are generated by the Xayid den. So the Xayid den, it slowly trickles out a larva at a time, and I think it can hold a bunch of them all at once. Ultimately, though, you're going to need additional Xayid dens in order to produce a larger ground army. Now, the very first units are just about to pop out. They're called the roamers. They're the basic units, and they're pretty fast, right? They actually deal a surprising amount of damage, and they have a nice little ability as well that can be used for scouting. And if I recall correctly, because I've already seen these games, even though I had absolutely no idea what was going on at the time, they use it as well right here at the very start. And this is honestly one of the coolest abilities for an early game unit that I've seen in a while. It may be completely broken, but it is neat. So if I understand correctly, I think they're gonna poke into the Protoss base here, and then they're gonna use that ability. It doesn't seem to do any damage whatsoever, but basically, yeah, there they go. These green things can be popped into the main base of the Protoss player here for the Xayid player to temporarily get a little bit of vision. Now, they didn't go far enough to really get any info right there inside of the main base. He almost saw the robo facility, but yeah, not quite. So our Protoss, by the way, mostly just playing a normal game here. I am not really gonna focus too much of my attention here because I'm assuming that most people watching this video are gonna be well aware. So these guys are called stalkers. They can blink. I know, you probably figured that out though. Anyways, other than that, we have these feeding pools. So the feeding pools are kind of like the supply depot / pylon / overlord. And it seems that they have a couple abilities as well. One of them is that they kind of function like a moon well. So units that are damaged can sort of like tap into the feeding pool and get some health back, which is really neat. There's also a defensive structure called the bile launcher or something like that, bile pit. Not exactly sure what it's called. And I believe it can only be built within the range of the feeding pool. So you won't be able to use it offensively very easily, or at the very least you're gonna have to like almost like add pylon power in order to pull that off. Now the roamers over here, they do pack a punch. The problem is that they don't have a whole lot of health and they die very quickly, but luckily they are quite fast. So they are going to be able to tippy-toe their way out of that situation once again. Other than the Xayid den over here for the ground-based units, there's also a structure called the avian nest. And as you may have already guessed, that is going to be for flying stuff instead. So The larva over here can be turned into ground-based units, and the larva over here can be turned into flying units instead. So we have Ravagers without tails. They're known as the Raptor. They kind of function a little bit. They kind of remind me a little bit of like a Banshee. So they can be used for like base harassment on the other side of the map, and obviously they can try and hurt some of that Protoss economy. Other than that, we have a Casnolisk Den. No idea what that does. We have a mutagen chamber, which seems to do the upgrading, sort of like an evolution chamber, I suppose. And I think some of these tech structures are needed to be able to build other units out of the larva over here. So we actually do have another unit right now coming up as well out of one of them. Anyways, as we have some harassment over here with the roamers at the third base, yeah, some of the... what are they called again? Some of the Raptors here are gonna start target firing down as many of those workers as possible. Lucky though here for the Protoss player, he did end up putting down a shield battery close by, so he is gonna be able to get rid of most of these units and keep most of his probes alive. Yeah, only a little bit of harassment really done. Nice bit of multitasking here, but battery overcharge is gonna allow these Immortals to stay alive as well against those roamers. Now here we go, look at this thing. It's like a walking overseer. Somebody in the chat called it an underseer, which I think is very funny. It's like an overseer with legs. Anyways, it's an eroder. It's another unit that can, of course, be used against all of these Protoss units. These Immortals now in a little bit of trouble, but I don't know if there's quite enough. The Xayid player here decides to back off for just a little while, and now the eroder has also shown up. It's a lot slower than the roamers, but also a lot more tanky, and the damage output is certainly not to be underestimated. So one thing I found with the Xayid, and my assessment may be completely wrong, but they seem to be very early / mid-game focused, because their late-game units just fall off really, really hard. At the very least, I haven't seen a Xayid late-game army where I was like, huh, yeah, that seems to be competitive. So it seems like their main focus is trying to win in the middle stages of the game, by even like a stronger extent than Zerg, you know? Like a lot of Zerg players in StarCraft 2, they like to sit back and make like that ultimate late game army. This is very much so the type of race that focuses on harassing the opponent to death. So it's extremely action-packed. Very little turtling in, well, this particular matchup at the very least, as far as I can tell. You really do want to be active. So eGGz is trying to take as many bases as possible. He's trying to build up his economy, but ultimately, he's just trying to build a whole lot of stuff. So the Xayid dens over here are growing, and with that he can also increase, yeah, the amount of units that he's producing. So right now we have the Scorpalisks. Scorpalisks kind of remind me, and again I may be completely wrong, but they kind of remind me of like an upgraded version of the Roamer. So the Roamers are like your very first unit that you get out. The Scorpalisks seem like a better version of the Roamer overall. At least a lot of players, as soon as they have access to the Scorpalisk, they seem to just stop producing Roamers altogether, but there may very well be a time and place for all of them. Now you can see that the units are visually quite distinct. I mean, it's obviously just made by like, I think it's mostly like this mod, I think from my understanding is made by like one dude primarily, which is honestly kind of insane, including the models and everything else. Obviously some of the sound effects and whatnot may be reminiscent of, well, the units you are well familiar with in StarCraft, but it is honestly a very impressive mod that's been in the works for years now. Anyways, the harassment continues, but our Protoss player is staying alive for now. These trades, though, are starting to look better and better right now for the Xayid. 12 additional Scorpalisks here will be joining the fray eventually. The Phoenixes, though, have taken care of those flying Raptors, but at the very least, there is still enough stuff available here for the Protoss to push this back. Fourth Nexus is coming up, and it looks like with some nice prism juggling, yeah, he's going to be able to push back these units for now, but still quite a few workers have gone down. So in the past, right, whenever we had any custom races added to StarCraft 2, usually they just kind of looked like a bunch of cursed combinations of Terran, Protoss, and Zerg units, and there's some of that in this mod as well. But oftentimes they were just way too powerful. So oftentimes they were just way stronger than the StarCraft 2 races, and it wouldn't be balanced whatsoever. And the thing that really seems to set the Scion mod apart is the fact that things actually seem pretty balanced. Like, this has been in the works. It's not just like a weekend project. This has been in the works for years, and I do believe I featured it on the YouTube channel as well quite some time ago at this point. But like, I was impressed with the way that like the units actually interact with one another, and how I mean, obviously, this is not as often played as like 1v1 in StarCraft 2, so it's really difficult to determine balance just from the handful of games that I've seen, but it honestly seemed surprisingly accurate and surprisingly good balance-wise. Neither race really seemed to have an overwhelming advantage. Anyways, this is the first time that the Protoss player goes across the map. I just mentioned that we haven't seen that many roamers after the Scorpilis come out, but that turns out to be, well, maybe not entirely true, because certainly more roamers did come up. We now also have the Spitters over here. Look at them. I think their face over there is in their tail. Look at that. Honestly, such a cool looking unit. In the meantime, we also have a Pharaon, which I believe, as you may have already guessed by the name, can ferry units around. So I think this is like the Dropper Lord / Prism / Medevac, but at the same time it's also a detector. So you have your detector and transport unit in one, which is kind of awesome. Anyways, yeah, we have these Scorpilis in the front to mostly just soak up a lot of the damage, and that's hopefully, at least in theory, allowing that back line to put in a bit more work. Big roamer counterattack in the meantime on the other side of the map. They can shoot up as well. No, can they? I was gonna say. No. It kind of looked like they were shooting up right there for a moment, but I did not remember that. Now, they're going after the Stalkers for now, and they're actually putting in a lot of work. Full-on counterattack here by eGGz. Recall being used right now by the Protoss player. That's an ability, believe it or not, that allows those Protoss units to go all the way back home. Counterattack here as well right now towards that base over at the 6 o'clock position. New expansion has been taken in the top left. We do have a +3 upgrade coming up right now as well here for the Xayid. 22 probes have gone down, a lot of it due to that run-by on the other side of the map, but it looks like Blink Stalkers are gonna at least be available here to push this back for now. Another unit joins the battlefield here. These guys are known as the Mentlings. They're almost like little baby queens. They do shoot up as well. They seem to be quite vulnerable, but they have like an auto-transfusion ability that allows them to, well, heal up some of the friendly Xayid units as well. Okay, that Colossus ends up going down nice and quickly. Zealots coming around the side right now, trying their very best to just charge away at as many of these units as possible. The Stalkers seem very strong, but it seems like splash damage is dealt right here by the Spitters, and it's ultimately allowing a lot of those Protoss units, yeah, to, well, go down. Another Colossus here trying to join in the fray. I actually think the flying units from Protoss were working out quite nicely. Those Phoenixes clearing out the Raptors. I would not have minded seeing a double down on the Phoenix production to maybe put on a little bit of counterattack damage too. Now I say that, there are indeed these bile pits set up right now on the other side of the map. We have a lot more production over here too with more and more of these Xayid dens, but it does kind of feel like this is kind of the stage in the game where, and I may be completely wrong, right, where the Xayid are kind of like maxed out. They've got access to all of their biggest units. There are still a couple that I believe they can focus into, but there's no denying that Protoss from here generally seems to be able to get the higher tech units going. So they tech up very quickly, they can put on a lot of pressure, but then in the late game, they seem to fall off at least a little bit. And obviously, again, with just very limited amounts of information, he just decided to add on a lot more Pharaons. I'm not exactly sure if that's too useful, because they are detectors as well as like units that can be used for transport, but anyways, Zealot run by over here in the top left-hand corner will at the very least be pushed back for now, but the real question is, how in the world is Xayid going to be able to deal with a fleet beacon transition? Colossi right now coming up as well, trying their very best to just deal as much damage as possible. Okay, one of them ends up going down. Yeah, they're trying to kite backwards. A few force fields over here, decently positioned by you. But these assailants from the sky are putting in quite a bit of work. They kind of look like giant ticks. At least that's how I remind them, you know? It is not the friendliest unit out there, but they deal damage from a distance and they're throwing that green stuff. It seems to deal damage in like 3 ticks on the opponent's units. In the meantime, once again, a roamer counterattack in the natural expansion, abusing the fact that Protoss has never rebuilt that wall over there. You, by the way, as far as I understand, like a mid-level Grandmaster player. So certainly not a bad Protoss player whatsoever in like the regular 1 versus 1 ladder. And if I understand correctly as well, he's like the highest ranked player in the Scion mod. So the fact that he like, you know, decides to play Protoss here and Xayid is still this competitive is kind of awesome. Right, eGGz obviously, I think, at least in my mind, a better known player than you. I've seen him compete in StarCraft 2 several times in the past, but Mama Ship is coming up. Question is, will the Mama Ship actually pop out? We have additional avian nests right now as well on the other side of the map, so it might be time to start roaming the map with more flyers. Okay, looks like the main base will stay alive for now. Base over here, though, all the way at the bottom in a world of trouble. Eggs all the way up to 108 workers, by the way. So he is just trying to flood the map with more and more units and just try to almost like harass the opponent to death here. The Mama Ship at this point is out. Obviously, you're gonna need detection if it decides to activate the cloaking ability, but with the new multiplayer balance patch, and of course this is played with all of the new changes, yeah, you are going to need detection, and right now those Pharaons, there's still one of them around. It's ultimately allowing at least some vision. Time Warp over here, not quite as powerful as it once used to be, but it looks like there may just be enough Xayid units for now. Couple more of those, what are they called? The Spitters. Coming in. They deal damage from a distance, they can be activated, but at this point, eGGz has been dominating the battlefield for quite some time, but I think ultimately what's allowing him this massive advantage are those run-bys that he did towards his opponent's natural as well as the opponent's main base. Here's another one. More and more roamers coming in. We have a lot more of those Scorpilisks now also on the production tab. Those melee units don't mess around. But it's mostly now a flying army right here for you, right? So that is something, well, I guess there's stalkers underneath, but there needs to be something right here to deal with the mothership. Obviously, though, we have some more units coming up. I think that's the Mendelisks, I think is what they're called. Anyways, we have these avian nests, so if he really needs to, he can still make flying units as well. Like, for example, those raptors we saw earlier to shut down the Mama Ship here, too. Still, this is a good amount of stalkers. It's a scary Protoss army. The bile pits, look at these things, they're awesome. Yeah, anyways, the bile pits are joining in too. We still have, though, the roamers going to town on the other side of the map, destroying the Protoss natural as well as the main base. U is moving forward right now. That sounds like a very cursed sentence, I apologize, but U is moving forward. Time Warp once again being utilized. There's a lot of money here available for eGGz. And there we go. We saw some of the raptors being used for harassment earlier, but they are ultimately gonna force the Protoss out of the game, and that means that eGGz wins game number 1. Okay, so next up, we find ourselves on a map called Cerulean Fall. eGGz has once again decided to play with the Xayid. However, the opponent, you don't remember? Sorry, it's just too easy. He decides to pick up the Chiron. So, in this particular tournament, during the Scion Cup, you could play your regular StarCraft race once per series. So after that, you had to play one of the custom races that were added to the game. So for this particular event, it may be kind of fun to tell you as well that, well, since there was a good chunk of money on the line, of course, players like, for example, Hero and, for example, Dark decide to sign up too. Now, I observed the very first games where Mr. Hero played, and he apparently did not know that he would be forced to play with custom races too, and, well, it did not go very well. I did also cast a couple of games of Dark, and let's just say that Dark immediately evolved into the dirtiest player in the world. Playing like full turtle, so like full 2-base turtle, not allowing the opponent to get any damage done whatsoever, basically forcing him to wait until the bases are mined out. And, well, of course, he decided to put all of his structures on the other side of the map when he sort of got the hang of it. If you guys are interested, I definitely can cast those games featuring Dark and Hero as well. Just let me know down below, but anyways, this is a much better series, I can tell you that much. Okay, so, we have eGGz going for a cheeky little proxy. We've got ourselves a feeding pool over here on the other side of the map. The Xayid then planted right next to it, because otherwise he would not be able to do so. Yut is, however, such a confusing name. I trip over my words every time when I cast U, but anyways. He decides to play the Chiron here. So how did the Chiron function? Well, I've only seen a handful of games, but bear with me, I'm gonna try my very best. First off, they built structures in little watery domes. Bit funky, I'm not exactly sure why, but that is how they apparently produce stuff. And much like the Xayid, they also need to have their worker, called the Converter, looking at it aggressively the entire time. By the way, there are already units right here coming up on the other side of the map. We did have a rush right here of, I think, the mutagen chamber, which may very well unlock the Scorpilisk. Okay. Anyways, there is no pylon slash supply depot slash overlord equivalent slash birthing pool or feeding pool rather. There's no equivalent of that right here for the Chiron. Instead, they gain additional supply by making their production structures. So the edifice over here, for example, is enabling additional supply. The same right here for the sanctum. We have a flying unit coming up that needs to, I believe, be built in dead space as well, or at the very least it's an option. We have an outlet coming up right here outside of the main base. So this will allow flying units to come in. There's a couple more interesting moments here, or a couple more interesting mechanics here, but already eGGz is trying to see if we can win this game in the next couple of minutes. Volts are being warped in right here together with the pulsar. So these are units that pop out of these structures. So both the edifice as well as the sanctum have charges. So you can see the little progress bar right here above the structures. It's a certain amount of maximum charges. I think it's either 2 or 3. It kind of depends. Maybe there's like upgrades to improve it. There's once again that scan ability, by the way, from those aromas. But anyways, oh, he does end up shutting down the big boy over here. Only volts are going to be available for now. But slowly but surely, additional charges are enabled right here on these structures, and then you can use those charges to warp in additional units, much like a Protoss does. I don't know if you can warp them in like map wide. I don't think so. You have to be in, I think, a range of like one of your structures, but I don't see a range indicator anywhere. Anyways, we do have a counterattack over here by eGGz, just trying his very best to see if he can kill this citadel that's just finished on the low ground. The Scorpilisk providing a lot of additional support here. Just trying its very best, and obviously the feeding pool over here also healing up some of those units, kind of like a Moonwell would. An Aurora right now, though, is being warped in, so that's one of the flying units. Look at that thing. It's kind of awesome. It's actually a very cool unit. And since there's not a whole lot of stuff right here for our Xayid player that shoots up, ultimately, the Aurora will kill all of these units. The question is, will he be able to kill the Citadel? Will he decide to kill the Citadel before he does so? Well, there is an activated defensive ability as well on this structure, and that is now going to allow these units from the Chiron player to push all of this back. You have an Emanator over here. No idea what it does. I guess it's a detector. Ooh, okay, we have a, that was, I think, the Whiterun announcer, if I'm not mistaken? Maybe not, I may be completely wrong. Anyways, there's an Emanator over here set up. I think that's one of the abilities right here of the Aurora. So the Aurora has put up that thing. I think it's considered the detector that will be here on, well, a timed life. So it won't be available all the time. I don't think you can move it around. The Xayid is once again trying to go around here, maybe finish off that Citadel, but I don't think it's going to happen. We have some subjectors here as well. Some decked out stalker looking things. But you see what I mean? Like, all of this is looking surprisingly competitive. And maybe I shouldn't be surprised. It's just that, like, my experiences in the past, they kind of dictate how I feel about stuff, right? I mean, it's kind of amazing to me how with, like, years of development, even if it's just, like, 1 or 2 people working on it for the majority of the time, you can flush out something as beautiful as this. Honestly, very cool. Now we have the Auroras harassing the opponent's base. Bile Pit over here, however, was produced at a reasonable time. Okay. And they're going to be able to push all of this back pretty nicely. Now we can still continue the harassment for a little while longer. We do have those little baby queens coming up right now. The Mendalisks. Is that what they're called? Mentlings. Ah, that's it. Yeah, they actually pack a punch. These units... I don't think that's their final model. I would be surprised if that is their final model, because they're literally just small queens. But yeah, maybe they are, I don't know. But it certainly does feel like they are incredibly powerful. Look at this thing. It's like a Nidus worm mixed with an extractor and then made purple. The Casnolisk then. I think that's like a tech structure. I think it unlocks additional upgrades. Yeah, and so this over here is then the evolution chamber equivalent. Anyways, in the meantime, on the other side of the map, we have additional edifices coming up. Edify. So that's the unit-producing structure, but also something that provides additional supply. And we have a reliquary coming up right now as well here for the Chiron? Yeah, Chiron. I should have written this down. But yeah, for the Chiron player. Whenever I cast something that's not a regular 1v1, I oftentimes catch myself going on autopilot a little bit. And it works quite well when I'm casting a regular game of 1v1, but when you suddenly have to, think about your words a little bit more, the autopiloting with the commentary, not nearly as effective. Anyhow, all right, so we got some additional units. So There's a bunch of cooldowns right here on this structure. I don't really understand exactly what they do, but they seem to be defensive tools that effectively allow the Chiron player to stay in the game for a little while longer, you know? Like with cheeses, it seems to be quite handy. It doesn't... Yeah, it's not enabled for a very long time. Look at this, by the way. Egg's backing up right now, throwing around that green stuff to see if the opponent is chasing him. And right now, well, he spots that that is not quite the case. Crux have now joined the battlefield together with the subjectors, and we have a ward over here too. Look at these units. The fact that we have like completely custom built models in the game is kind of amazing. Big drop over here in the main base. Yeah, this is also a really cool unit. So it's called the Aperture. And it seems like you can effectively unload all of the units in one go. But it's kind of slow, it's kind of vulnerable, so you have to be careful that you don't get caught off guard. The Auroras over here, the Auroras, they're gonna continue harassing here. But we have some of those Mendlings just trying to keep as many of those workers alive here as well. So both players slowly building up their economies. Now eGGz is sneaking out another scavenger nest right over here on the right side of the map, trying to make sure that the opponent does not see it. Aggressive push up towards the high ground right now by you, but it's likely not going to work out all too well. I mean, those feeding pools, right? So the races seem to all have like defensive tools that makes it difficult for the opponent to like cheese them out of the game, if that makes any sense, you know? That Citadel providing some additional sustain, but then also the same can be said right here for the feeding pools. There is no like visual on these things, and I also don't know if they are permanently just providing a passive heal. It would be kind of awesome if they did function exactly like Moonwells in Warcraft 3, where units actually have to take like sips out of it and like it will empty. And then, you know, not allow you to heal the entire time until it slowly regenerates over time. I mean, that would be pretty sick. Obviously, there's only so much you can do as a, well, very small production team. But still, the concepts are awesome, right? I mean, a lot of these things that we're seeing in this game could literally be copy-pasted into, like, a StarCraft 3. Or another RTS game made by, like, another company. You know, like another Blizzard-like RTS. There's a lot of potential, and a lot of the unit ideas and mechanics that we see in these, well, custom races could easily be incorporated into another game. It's kind of awesome. Like, this is the closest we are to StarCraft 3 right now, if you don't take into account the other games, I guess, that are currently in development as well, that I am keeping a very close eye out on, by the way. As long as, yeah, they continue building on those games, I am certainly going to focus on it myself as well. Haven't really posted a lot of videos about, well, look at these guys. These hamster ball looking things. The Umbras. Look at that. That's such a cool unit idea, though. That unit movement is really neat. It's like that Overwatch hero. I don't know what his name is. Anyways, we have an attack once again mounting, it seems, through the center of the map this time around. We do, however, have a little run by. Yu does have vision of it, so he needs to be a bit careful. Yeah, he's gonna run in right now. Okay. And these roamers, Scorpolisks, they don't mess around. Nah, they definitely put in quite a bit of work. Now, we do have one of the units coming up here as well very soon. They're like zealots with sticks. I think that's the best way to describe them. They're like zealots wielding very sharp hockey sticks. We'll have to see exactly when they join the battlefield, but this is one of their upgrades. We have a little bit of a run by over here, killing the economy. In the meantime, Yu has decided to send his Chiron towards the top section of the map where there's a whole lot of nothing going on. eGGz is gonna start up the harassment over here. We have additional, well, flying units being warped in here too. That would be nice, mostly just for base defense, I suppose, but the Citadel does end up going down. Run by over here, yeah, set up to the wrong direction of the map, but now he's gonna be able to start overwhelming the opponent. Still though, 2 Citadels and 2 bases were just killed right here by eGGz. Is there enough for you to, well, return the favor on the other side of the map? There's reinforcing units right now popping out of all of those cocoons inside of the main base of the Xayid player, but a lot of that blue army has now returned back home. The expansion over here on the low ground did end up going down, but if it's gonna come at the cost of this entire army, that would be a little bit much. Now, we do have one of those units using one of its defensive skills right over there, putting up a protective bubble to keep some of these Chiron units alive for a little while longer. The Auroras, they have not been addressed very well in this game. Yeah, we really need something that gets rid of those units fast. We can pick up the units over here, because apparently they don't have an air-to-air ability, but these units, I kind of feel, it kind of feels like making Banshees as a reaction to seeing like a Roach all-in, you know? Like, it's, yeah, technically not a bad idea, but it's certainly not the most optimal way to play. And I really feel like if eGGz was addressing the Auroras a little bit better, he would probably, okay, so he's making some of his own units right now, the Raptors once again. Yeah, he would probably be in a far more comfortable spot. Another Citadel right there does get sniped, but that's the unit I was talking about. These things are awesome. The Pariahs. So they have a movement skill that's extremely fast and allows them to like run around the map super, super quickly. So they can use it to catch up to enemy units, but also to, well, get back into action defensively. But they really are just zealots with long sticks. Very sharp looking sticks, but another group of units over here, the Roamers, together with, what are they called? The Revilers over here. Okay. So they're gonna try and chase him. Can we activate that ability again? I don't know how long the cooldown is. Yeah, I think it costs them a certain amount of energy as well, which is a mechanic that is at least not visible as far as I know on this observer interface. And I don't entirely understand how the mechanic works either, but I don't think you can just spam the ability very easily. I believe they have to go back home in order to recharge or something along those lines. Anyways, there we go. Look at that. It's so powerful. These are kind of like the upgraded version, it feels like, of the Volt, albeit a melee version. Kind of like the Scorpelisk, I suppose, you know? They kind of feel like an upgraded version of those other units we've seen already, but the Genotron, by the way, so the Terran-like race that got added to this game also has some pretty amazing units. There's this one unit called, I think it's called the Boar? Honestly, one of the coolest unit designs I've ever seen. It's like a battering ram, but then a flying unit. So its main ability is to basically, it's like a big, I don't know, arrowhead looking flying unit. Basically, the idea of the Genotron is that you use that unit to like boost through the opponent's army. So the idea is that you absolutely destroy them by running through them. But obviously that puts them in a very vulnerable position. Honestly, very cool. Anyways, the Bile Pits, there's no Genotron in this series. The Bile Pits over here go into town trying to repel this big attack right here. Additional, well, hamster wheels have decided to, or I guess hamster balls, have decided to join in the fray as well. You did previously lose a bunch of expansions on the other side of the map. He's now remade a base over at the 6 o'clock position, and he's decided to try and see if he can potentially take care of this base over here too, but yeah, it looks like the feeding pools together with the Bile Pits are gonna allow eGGz to keep this base alive, but just barely. A new unit has joined in the fray as well called the Gyre. This thing, I think, had like a little mini vortex ability, if I'm not mistaken. Seemed very powerful if used in the right situation, but not quite as powerful as, like, you know, the StarCraft 2 Wings of Liberty mothership way back in the day. For those of you that are old like myself and that remember that ability. Yeah, it's not quite that strong, but it certainly does seem to have some really nice late-game utility. They're kind of like science vessel looking things, right? Okay, are we gonna use it? That would be nice. Here we go, here we go, here we go. Yeah, look at that. So look at them. So they can pick up units, gyrating, right? It's an activated ability, and they can then drag the opponent's units into the army. That is such a cool ability. That's so sick. That's really well thought of. No idea if it's balanceable, but you can break your opponent's position without really dealing damage with the ability directly by dragging them to another, well, location. Once again, another Aurora, by the way, joining in the fray as well. A little bit annoying right here. Another base is now building on the other side of the map. Same can be said over here as well for that scavenger nest all the way at the top of the map. This base is running low though. The scavenger nest is slowly healing up over time because of the feeding pools, it seems, but it is dangerously low right now. An emanator has been put up over here as well by you, so that's the Aurora's ability. Very handy because it's a detector, but also, well, vision. And honestly, this seems to be one of the most powerful abilities in the game. Does eGGz have vision of it? Can he just, like, kill this if he had... Yeah, okay, he can just kill it. Okay, so maybe it's not that strong. It's a visible detector, so the opponent can just kill it. I guess because they kind of look like Protoss units, I immediately assume it's like a cloaked observer, but that's not quite the case. So it's a timed, visible unit that does provide vision and detection, but it's pretty snipeable too. Okay, we're gonna just, yeah, kill the base. Fair enough. Base at this point is dead. Honestly, killing it right now and then remaking it may just be the right call. But he doesn't want to go back for another base over there. We have some conduits right now as well in the sky. We have an Empyrean over here. A Zenith. These are some units that the Xayid does not have access to, okay? These are some proper late game... Well, I was going to say spellcasters. I do think they have some activated abilities. Yeah, I think this may be one of them. This, like, psionic storm looking ability, but then yellow. Anyways, they do have some activated abilities, but it's gonna unlock some really big boys right here for you. And I don't know if raptors are gonna be sufficient to try and counter that. Only time will tell. Eggs once again. He's breaking out of that position at home. He's thinking about going for some counterattacks. So besides the orbiting ability, besides the gyre, it has 2 additional spells as well. I'm not exactly sure what it does. Alright. Anyways, here's one of the late game units, called the Paragon. This reminds me a little bit of a battlecruiser. So it deals a tremendous amount of damage, sort of like a battlecruiser does. But probably not quite as powerful as a battlecruiser. Auroras continue a harassment on the other side of the map. How many workers has he killed? 69? Nice. Okay. Yeah, we have one of them. So the Paragon over here, kindly showing us what its ability looks like. We're gonna set up another Citadel over here as well in this position. Another structure is coming up too. It could just be, by the way, that there is a proper late game unit for the Xayid. It's just that none of the players that I've seen play the Xayid in like a dozen or so games decided to go for it. That is definitely very possible. I haven't messed around with the mod myself enough to really give you a proper answer for that, but it seems like as far as like death balls go, as far as like an ultimate army goes, both the Chiron as well as the Genetron are a lot more formidable. Because right now, eGGz has kind of been pushed into a corner, and he does have a nice army, but this kind of strikes me as like a mid-game force, whereas the opponent is making a proper late-game force, right? I mean, look at all these Paragons, all of these Gyres, they're putting in a ton of work. It's gonna be difficult, I think, to beat this army. So I believe these structures, yeah, the Zeniths over here, I think these are also just working on a charge-based system. So he can just warp in. There you go. A bunch of big boys. Imagine warping in a battlecruiser. I mean, not with a teleportation ability, but, you know, kind of like you would warp in a Stalker or a Zealot. Kind of nuts. Maybe the Protoss technology should have allowed them to, well, warp in carriers, right? Warp in Void Rays, warp in Colossi. Kind of feels like an extended version of that. Anyways, we have a lot of upgrades here researching too. I have no idea what they do. I can't click on them or hover over them in this particular interface, so there's no way for me to know exactly what they do without, well, playing the game a whole lot myself. So strategically, I'm not exactly sure what the best move is here, but... Oh yeah, we have some of these things too. These are cool. We haven't seen them yet. They're called Nullifiers. So they are kind of like the Photon Cannon, Spore Crawler, Bile Pit equivalent for the Chiron. There's also a Stratus now in the air. I think this is another defensive tool. Maybe sort of like a sensor tower type of thing. Anyways, the Nullifiers are going to finish up here momentarily. I don't believe 4 Nullifiers is going to be enough. But look at that, by the way. Did somebody call for an Exterminator? We do have some up in the air right now. They have Spore Crawlers for butts. Look at that. Kind of awesome. A little bit of a Roamer Scorpolis counterattack right now, distracting this very slow-moving Chiron late-game force. I mean, sure, the Nullifiers over here are handy. Sure, we can kill a bunch of these units here, but you still have to be careful that you don't get too carried away. This base over here just got destroyed, and Yu's economy once again is down the drain. Starting up as many upgrades as he can as well at home. Sneaking out another expansion here. This will get scouted by the Volts. Oh, you know what? That Zealot hockey stick that I was talking about, it's over here at the bottom of the screen as well. It may just be their attack upgrades. Like the general ground attack upgrades. If that's the case, we really need to double down. If I'm not mistaken, all of these custom races also go up to like +3, +3, +3, +3 upgrades. We should definitely have seen a little bit more than that. Subjectors coming across the map. And here's the Paragons as well. This is the army that you've been building up for a while. I think these guys have like... Is it them that have an activated ability as well that shoots splash damage? I think so. Yeah, here we go, here we go. Look at these balls. Look at him. Look at him. Look at these. That's so insane. It also looks incredibly imbalanced. But anyways, you can see where it goes. It's very slow moving, but it kind of reminds me of the Hunter Seeker missile. Now here's the eGGz. This provides a massive shield. So look at this. 2,836 shields right now. I think it's basically adding additional shields to everything within this bubble. Look at this. It looks amazing. It looks so beautiful. Anyhow, yeah, I think ultimately there's just a very scary army right here for the Chiron. Maybe this Xayid force here can... I mean, it's so pretty. That bubble thing is amazing. Not sure if that's using all in-game assets or if that's like custom made, but that bubble is something special. Anyways, Yu is trying to see if he can win this game here with a very scary army, right? He's not quite staying on top of all of the expansion on the right side, so if I'm not mistaken, yeah, he hasn't seen these bases that are now being snuck out here. So map vision and map awareness is definitely something we can work on. I think this is probably a little bit too much supply actually caught up in these ultimate units. You probably still want to have like 20 or so army supply minimum dedicated to smaller troops, just to like go in for the counterattack and set up a run-bys on the right side in this particular case. Here go the Gyres once again, just trying to pull these units out of position. The ground army did a pretty good job right there though for the Xayid player. It's just that these flying units still need to be addressed. We have a lot of additional big boys coming up right now here as well for Xayid. The Savithon. Is that what its name? The Zavithon? I don't know how you pronounce that. Xayithon. No, that's probably it. Xayithon. Anyways, here's more splash damage. Yeah, no. That ability seems like the Hunter Seeker missile used to be in StarCraft 1 for the Raven. Remember that? Or not StarCraft 1. StarCraft Wings of Liberty. And I believe even for like Heart of the Swarm for a while too. The Mass Raven Hunter Seeker missile. I mean, I guess this one is like a more dodgeable version of it, but still seems pretty difficult to counter. Yeah, so these Revilers are apparently like the ultimate, I guess, ground-to-air unit that you have. Okay, we have a couple of those Exterminators coming in once again as well. But the splash damage here, yeah, that we just have coming out of these units is kind of nuts. That being said, I mean, there's still some production available here. It looks like the Paragons just have too much health. There's nothing really countering them right here for eggs. And there it is. That means we're going to game number 3. Okay, so now that we all sort of understand the basics of both the Chiron and the Xayid, we're gonna do it one more time. Our final game for today, it takes place on the map Redshift. This is one of the coolest maps that we've had in the StarCraft 2 map pool over the last couple of years. At least is one of my personal favorites to watch and to cast games on. To play games on it, was never my personal go-to. This particular map, if you may recall, has an in-base gold. However, this is a complete wall off, so it kind of looks like units can fit in between. They can't. I mean, flying units obviously can go over it, but ground units cannot squeeze in between these mineral fields until the mineral fields are mined out. And once they are mined out, looks like we are going to take this base early, or at least he's thinking about it. Once they are mined out, life gets a little bit messy, because then suddenly you've created a massive opening into your own bases. And you may just accidentally set up a really large run-by path for your opponent to make use of, even though that wasn't really your original intention. Plus, on top of that, of course, units can harass this from the back of the golden mineral line too. So it's a dangerous decision to take the gold, but it has, of course, a lot of potential as well, because you can get a massive early game boost. Alright, so Edifice first right over here, expansion on the low ground. We have a formulator building inside of the main base, which is apparently the gas. In the meantime, scavenger nest here, building on the low ground. Eggs does indeed want to get that early game Well, income. And he's going to scout for his opponent too, to see if that is happening as well on the other side of the map. Not quite the case. So this is going to be a more conservative start right here for you. And eGGz has decided to play this one a little bit more greedily. This is something that you will figure out as well, most likely here in the next minute or so. It's going to be important for him. This is a little bit annoying, of course. Yeah, that structure is not done yet. We're going to have to pull another worker. Or, for example, a vault. There he goes. These are cool looking units, man. I really like the little guys. Look at them. They look cute. He's just shooting from... He's like a cyclops. Not sure why he's got legs. No arms. But I do think they look pretty neat. Anyways. Yeah, so at this point, I mean, the golden base here is done. We have a feeding pool coming up. You now also confirms exactly what's going on. And immediately, that little vault is gonna make a beeline towards the back of that golden mineral line. In order to go for defensive structures, you need to have... Yeah, it needs to be within range right here of the feeding pool. Or like the hatchery, I think, itself. Or the scavenger nest, I suppose. Not exactly sure what the exact rules are right here on the bile pit, but in order to go for another one over here on the outside of this mineral line, he would need to make another one of those feeding pools. And obviously the feeding pool is still gonna provide a little bit of passive healing. So just pulling units away from the mineral line, only for them to return a bit later, is not a bad idea. We have a couple of those roamers now showing up too, and they're gonna be able to push back that very first Chiron unit here pretty easily. Now we've built up some charges though, and that is a lot of additional lads right now that have joined the battlefield. We're not gonna rush it out just yet. We're gonna wait until I think we get a little bit of a speed improvement for them. And then we're gonna fight them once again on the other side of the map momentarily. Because you really cannot allow your opponent to have a gold base like this. In the meantime, feeding pool coming up a little bit closer in range right over here to the other side of this mineral line. So, okay, we're gonna build a feeding pool over here too. But I think you can probably fit one of those bile pits over here on the other side of this wall. Maybe even multiples. That would not be a bad idea. Now we have the roamers on the other side of the map. Sanctum now also starting to accumulate some charges here. Nice target firing right there by eGGz. Big warp in. Yeah, I think these provide the ability to like produce those big glowy boys, whatever they're called. Those early game glowy boys. They're pretty powerful is what we saw at least in the previous games. Wouldn't mind seeing them join in as well for the harassment on the other side of the map. So we are going to go straight into some additional upgrades over here. And eGGz, feeling greedy as always, decides to go for a third base here. So he's feeling pretty confident about this golden base of his. There is a bile pit right now building over here, fair enough. But I don't think one bile pit is going to be quite enough. Nah, it just deals single target damage here. I mean, it deals a lot of damage, don't get me wrong. Its attack speed is not to be underestimated, but that is going to get picked off pretty easily. And it looks like the vaults, they are going to be okay. They have a lot of power. Smash like, guys. Thank you. Thank you. I'll be here all day. No brootlings, by the way, coming out of these structures. Sad moment. Anyways, there's a little bit of space over here. If we can hold position a couple of those vaults, I think he can deny at least like half of that mineral line pretty easily. US decided to go for a double expansion himself. Building one up here, and another one over here as well at the fourth base spot. We have a reliquary coming up, and once again, an Elysium is already available. So we're doing a bit more of a tech rush this time around. Yep, and that's going to be the end for this base's mining for at least a little while. And it looks like the vaults are actually within range here of the base itself. The scavenger nest certainly not to be underestimated. Now we have one little roamer here on the other side trying to pull the attention of the vaults away. He decided to send the workers back to mining here at the golden mineral line for a bit, but yeah, that's not quite a great idea. Okay. Ooh, a little bit of a jittery dance over here. Honestly, that's what StarCraft 2 units do as well, right? So, nothing all too weird there. Upgrade started up right now in the reliquary. And I wonder if we're gonna already warp in a unit from the Elysium, because that thing certainly seemed very powerful last time around, but it does need some sort of support, right? You can't just make use of it and call it a day. Do you guys agree, though, that this is looking surprisingly competitive? Maybe I shouldn't be using the word surprisingly, but genuinely, these are some really good back and forth games that we've been seeing here today. And yeah, I'm impressed. It just is not something I really expected to this extent. Like, when I think back of early days of StarCraft 2, it was guys turtling and it was guys just cheesing. Those were really the only two options that we saw most of the time. Sort of like that dark playstyle that I described previously. But this is neither turtling nor cheesing. This is neither player really aiming for like a death bowl or like proxying everything on the other side of the map. This is some proper macro games with constant activity all over the map. And obviously these guys are good, but they're definitely not the fastest StarCraft players in the world. Imagine this with like pro gamers playing at like 300-400 average actions per minute. There's a ton of potential here, and I'm sure there are broken builds, don't get me wrong. I'm sure there are very broken strategies. If this game gets played at like a very competitively high level, I'm sure balance issues will arise very quickly, because StarCraft pros are good at many things, but they're especially very good at finding strategies that they can abuse repeatedly over and over and over again. So I'm sure there are things that need some fine-tuning, right? But just the base design of everything, color me impressed. I don't think this base, by the way, has been spotted by eGGz. Oh no, he has seen it, he just hasn't addressed it yet. And that may very well bite him in the butt. Like, the golden minerals here are nice and all. He did re-secure the base over here too. But he's gonna need something a little bit more in order to shut down all of these expansions. At this point, Yu is slowly starting to outgrow the opponent. I mean, income-wise, he's been making some good progress. Yeah, the income advantage here, I mean, there was a small advantage because of the gold, but it's important not to overestimate the advantage that a gold base can bring you. So, golden minerals return 7 minerals a trip. Blue minerals, they return 5 minerals a trip. The downside of golden bases oftentimes is that they have only a smaller amount of mineral fields. So, in this particular case, as is the case with most golden bases in StarCraft 2, there are 6 mineral fields, whereas a conventional base is 8. So, ultimately, the main advantage is that you can get the same income off of less workers. Now, look at this thing, by the way, the Myriad. I don't think we've seen one of those yet, have we? Look at them. I don't know what they do. I kind of like how these Protoss units look like insects. You know what I mean? Other than these guys over here. These guys are kind of nuts. The Zealots with the hockey sticks, they don't mess around, but they have a very insectoid sort of feel to them, despite the fact that, yeah, they're supposed to be like high tier, high quality, very high technology based units. It's kind of a cool combination. Anyways, in the meantime, the actual bugs over here are going to town. Volt joining in the fray. It looks like this little run by over here in the top right hand corner is gonna get shut down easy peasy by these pariahs. Honestly though, I think a lot of that is just a numbers game, right? There was just way more units right here for the player in yellow, compared to the amount of stuff that eGGz was sending across. Ooh. Oh, snap. They spawn little units. Are they like ground carriers? Woo. Little baby ships coming out. That's actually kind of neat. Okay. So they do automatically reproduce another one. They do give me like StarCraft Brood War Scarab vibes, right? Where you can have some Reavers absolutely murdering ground units. Probably not quite to that extent here, but does give me some similar vibes. Looks like we needed to send some additional Scorpalist here towards the other side of the map. That ultimately, yeah, is pretty good against these pariahs. Okay. We're gonna go for some nullifiers here. Oh, they can be built from the other side of the wall. That's fun. So they have a little bit of range on building their structures. I noticed that earlier too with the gases being built over here up north. I think the 2 workers that were building them were somewhere in the middle of the mineral line. Apparently you can build nullifiers from right there. So it looks like, yeah, eGGz had to be a lot closer when he tried to build those bile pits on the other side of that wall. Anyways, an entirely different unit composition here from the Chiron player this time around. Well, here they go. And upon seeing them, apparently Eggs immediately decides to tap out. He does not have an answer to those, well, ground-looking carriers. Anyways, let me know your thoughts on this down below in the comment section of this video. Very interested in hearing if you would like to see more, for example. Maybe you hate it. Maybe you want me to just cast regular good old StarCraft 2. I mean, I certainly will, don't get me wrong, but interested in hearing your feedback. For now, though, thank you very much for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Don't forget to smile, and I'll see you once again very soon for another video.